Just want to say I'm very, very grateful to be here at Development and Peace. I am the Youth Programs Officer right now, and I've been in that position for a couple of years. But I started at Development and Peace as a high school student, as a youth representative, and it's been a huge part of my life and my faith journey and putting faith into action. And it's a great privilege to be here today with some of these wonderful people and yourselves to celebrate the youth movement, to talk more about it, and to have our some of our youth reps, our partner, and some people from our networks to express some of the challenges that we face in youth engagement in DNP and beyond, and some opportunities, and what our priorities are going forward. So we will have each of our panelists introduce themselves, and they'll talk for a few minutes about where they're coming from. They'll express themselves about their priorities and their challenges for youth engagement. And then we have some questions prepared, some of which came from you, generally, in the consultation process. We drew out some of the themes that you've identified, and we're going to kind of expand on them a little bit more from our young adult perspective here. So I will say your name, and then if you could introduce yourself. So they have about 5 minutes to speak at the beginning, and then we'll delve into the questions. So Aloysius, could you begin, please?
Right in the middle. I didn't expect to be right here. Hello, everyone. My name is Aloysius. I'm the youth rep from Central Ontario. So I'm based in Toronto. Recently finished my undergrad last year at the University of Toronto, studying peace, conflict, and justice studies, and doing my master's now in journalism at Toronto Metropolitan. Right now, I'm working with CBC Radio Canada, and I've been involved, or known of Development and Peace since around 2013, 2014, when Luke's Talking was still the animator in Toronto and would go around the schools there, and then more involved when he invited me back to join the youth movement in and about 2018. So yeah, the youth DNP and being involved in the youth movement has been a really big part of my life, and how I've been able to, I think, live out my faith and also put into action what I've been learning, both in terms of both in schools and in terms of you know, if I'm learning about particular topics and issues around the world, but also my own faith, of course. And I think that's about it. I don't know if there's anything else you want us to discuss, Lena, but I think I'll leave it off of there.
Great, thank you, Aloysius. And la prochaine va être Tadi.
The next one, Takin Swen de Montréal.
Je m'appelle Tad.
Hello, my name is Teddy. My real name is Stephanie, but usually people call me Tenny. I am from Montreal. What can I say? I'm doing a doctoral studies. I've also worked in the field of education. Especially in the northern communities of Quebec, the northern First Nations communities, the Cree Nation. I am a member of the Métis Nation of Ontario. My father and I are First Nations. Why have I been involved with Development and Peace? I have a specific answer. It was a Truth and Reconciliation Commission. I was there as a volunteer. Is it better now? Thank you. I was there as a volunteer, and I met another student to volunteer, and we spoke to each other. And she told me that she was part of this group. I'd never heard of it. I'd never heard of Development and Peace. She was very nice. It interested me. I admired the work that was being done. And everyone is very nice. And I heard many people say they made real friends. And for me, it was essential that not only that we work together, but that we are friends. Maybe I should stop. Maybe if I'm not taking too much time, I would also like to say it was the issue of the study of the northern nations and the difficulties in the southern countries that attracted me to compared to other groups that were doing excellent work, but not as critical, that did less to help those of us who were in the North and our movement for actions for justice. Then, thank you very much.
Okay, and now we have Paul Turner.
I'm not even really supposed to be here. I'm Paul Turner. I'm a retired teacher, 32 years, and I'm a trustee with the Niagara Catholic District School Board. I'd rather share a story of irony as Dr. Lance Dixon did. I'm sitting in the back over there, and the two of us are in different tables, and this fella comes over beside me and says, "Do you mind if I sit beside you?" I said, "Yeah, sure. That's great." I said, "Where are you from?" He says, "Newfoundland." I says, "Oh, that's awesome." I says, I'm going there next month. But you probably don't know where the place is. It's a little fishing community of about 230 people. It's called Renews." And he says, "Yeah, I know where it is. I live there." Great story. And again, Dr. Lance Dixon, thank you very much for your presentation. My head is swimming. Okay, I have attention deficit syndrome, so you made me feel very uncomfortable with your story. A shout out. Yesterday was awesome. Michael Flynn, thank you for grounding us with what you said yesterday, because the reality is that Development and Peace does a lot of great work. And one of my mentors is Eileen McCarthy, who many of the older people might know who she is. She's a legend with Development and Peace and was a very dear friend of mine. And she would have said the same thing. She would have shook me and said, "Just stay positive. Hope is the key."
Thank you, Paul. And unfortunately, we couldn't have any students from any of our wonderful DNP schools join us for this conference. As you can imagine, June is not exactly an ideal time to welcome students under 18 who are kind of in the throes of exams and that kind of thing. So not ideal timing for them, but I was able to do an interview with a few students from the DNP club at Bishop Redding School in what town? Niagara? Hamilton? Anyway, in Milton, Ontario, that's right. And they just wanted to mention in their introduction that they really wanted to join DNP because of the very clear commitment to social justice, the ability to put faith in action, and how participatory it could be, all of the interactive activities designed and the kind of ability that they had to build community. So that was just what they wanted to add to this part. And so next we'll pass it over to Rebecca Rathbone.
Hi, everyone. I'm Rebecca, and I'm currently working for Caritas Internationalis in the Vatican as their officer promoting youth leadership. I've been in that position for just over a year now, but before then, I'm very proud to say that I had a great experience working with Development and Peace and volunteering with Development and Peace. My first brush with the DNP was actually as a high school student myself. Cathedral High School in Hamilton. I did a Think Fest every year that I was there and had a wonderful time and learned a lot. And then my next brush with development and peace came as an internship halfway between my Master's of Global Affairs program at the University of Toronto. Luke Stocking took me in as an intern who wanted to learn more about the organization and doing this work that we do from the perspective of faith. So thank you, Luke, for bringing me in. And had a wonderful time, worked with Kathleen as well on the Catholic schools programs after that as an intern. And then when I graduated, I was hired here actually in Atlantic Canada as the Atlantic animator. And I had 3 wonderful years in this area supporting our 7 dioceses out here. And I'm so happy to be back. And then after that, I was the Development and Peace animator in Southwestern Ontario, so the region where I'm from, supporting Hamilton, London, and St. Catharines. So I love this organization, and I'm so happy to be back among you now.
Beautiful. Thank you, Rebecca. And last but not least, we have Fanny Schmidt.
Hello, everyone. So my name is Fanny. I apologize for my Francophone friends. My mother tongue is French, but I'm going to do this panel in English because I'm used to speak English for work. But if at some point I switch to French, it means jet lag hits me. So all good. So I'm here because I'm working for CITSE, which is International Family of Catholic Social Justice Organization, and Development and Peace is part of this network. More specifically, I work for Change for the Planet, Care for the People initiative. Well, Change for the Planet was originally a campaign that started in 2015. At the time where there was COP21, it was a launch of the SDGs, Sustainable Development Goals, and also the release of the Pope encyclical Laudato Si. And this initiative was aiming at encouraging people, individuals and communities to live in a more sustainable way and making this 1.5 degrees goal alive, keeping it alive. Then growing it, so it become an initiative, and yeah, its goal was really inspired and pushed by Laudato Si encyclical to go towards ecological conversion and to implement in our daily life and go towards respond to the cry of the poor and to the cry of the earth. More concretely, it's coordinated by 10 focal points of the different member organization of CITSE. Among them, we have Selena from Development and Peace. We have 5 pillars, the 2 main ones. So the goals for us is to strengthen a network of young supporters and to empower them to be champions of change. And we also aim at creating, helping, supporting the CITSE effective policy. So to really bring sustainable lifestyles to a political, more global agenda. So we have 3 roles, 3 ways of working by connecting, influencing, and storytelling. Connecting, we're trying to support the building of movements, to engage with the church, with the allies, with the partners. One way for us to do it is that we create events for spaces for young people to exchange, to learn from each other, to get inspired and to take action. An example of that is 2 months ago, we organized a camp in Portugal, a 1-week camp in a beautiful place called Casabella. If you've never heard of it, please check it because it's an amazing, beautiful place going towards spirituality and ecological conversion. We actually had 2 supporters from Development and Peace at this camp. We were super happy to have people coming from so far away. And one is actually here in this room, normally, Laura, there. So yeah, this was one of the example of the event that we organized to connect people. The second role is, stop me if I speak too much. The second role is influencing. So we intend to influence decision makers and policymakers. Our way as Change for the Planet to do that is by sharing and participating to important events on climate change. Last year for COP26, we mobilized remotely young people because of COVID. Normally we were supposed to go to COP26 in Glasgow, but sadly it did not happen. But we did still mobilize young people to share messages on climate change during the 2 weeks of COP26. We have also other different ways to influence. We create challenges for young people to raise more awareness, and many other things. I'm going to keep it short, sorry. And the last role is storytelling. It's really our way for us to reach out through inspiring and inspiring stories. Our way to do it with Change for the Planet was we released a documentary called The Future Lies with Youth last year in October. And this documentary is about youth activism. So in this documentary, we have 8 young supporters from different member organizations of CITSE explaining their way of being a youth activist, because in the end, there are so many ways to be a youth activist. And I think it was a great way to show leadership among CITSE member organization. I think that's pretty much it.
Thank you very much, Fanny, and everyone else for those introductions. Yes. Now, we were supposed to have an additional person on our panel, Rami Chan, who you will recognize the name from, as she was also supposed to lead a workshop this weekend. Unfortunately, she was not able to come in person, but she and her team managed quite last minute to put together a beautiful video for us. One of the things the youth movement in particular has been talking about is challenging a bit about our relationships with partners. We don't just fundraise, give money, talk about what they do in our communities in order to better support them. We also have, of course, a lot to learn. And so Rami is the director of YRDP in Cambodia. And we wanted to take this opportunity to learn a bit from her about her youth engagement strategies, the challenges she's faced, and what her priorities are. So if we could queue up that video, that would be great.
Good morning, everyone. My name is Rami. I'm the Executive Director of Youth Resource Development Program, or you can call YDP. It's one of Development Peace Partner in Cambodia. And thank you, Development and Peace, for giving me opportunity to share with you the work of YDP with young people. It's pity that I cannot make it to Halifax this time, but I hope that this video will give you information about that we do with young people. Youth Resource Development Program, or YDP, is one of the leading youth organizations that started in Cambodia in 1992, and we work with young people to educate and empower them to be active and responsible citizens who take concrete initiative and motivate others for promoting sustainable peace, justice, and a democratic society. To build such quality of active citizen, YDP engage young people in development of their critical thinking skill. We empower them to exercise their civil and political rights and strengthen their social conscience for promoting social positive action. YDP organize a lot of trainings, workshops, and forums to build knowledge, skill, increase knowledge of young people, and also we provide and facilitate a lot of space where young people can interact and dialogue with members of parliament, representatives of relevant government agency that we work with, and also other relevant stakeholders. As a youth organization, we know young people are passionate about their action in community, YDP provide technical and also financial support to young people to start their own initiative, their own projects in community that promote good governance in extractive industry, climate justice, peace building, as well as social protection for young people. I was asked to talk about the success and the challenge of YDP. As an organization working with young people more than 30 years, we are very proud that we have engaged and mobilized almost 100,000 of young people in our program activities. We are proud that they increase their knowledge, their capacity, they become competent, they brave and speak about their issue and the issue of their community and their countries. They organize themselves, they even start their project and initiative in community to change the community situation and also their own situation. Under the current context for the last 4 or 5 years, I think not just Cambodia but other countries face similar thing. It's about shrinking of civic and political space. Even Cambodia as a democratic country state in the constitution, but the space that we are having is very limited, related to freedom of speech, freedom of assembly, getting together to work on sensitive issue. It's very narrow. The young people that we work with have difficulty to organize their event trainings and activities in community, and they need to get approval from local authority. Our exposure trip taking young people to community infected by development projects were monitored by local authority. I was asked to comment on the role of youth in education, advocacy and action to change unjust system. Nelson Mandela said, education is the most powerful weapon which you can use to change the world. It's very important when we work with young people that we engage them to understand the root cause of the issue, engage them in reflection how those issues affect their life and the lives of others. As a young people, at least in Cambodia context, that young people are targeted by private sector, by politicians, and that's very important that as a young person, your voice is matter. So if you want to do advocacy, speak up, organize yourself, join action with other young people that have similar passionate about the change. Your action will create positive social change. Whatever we're doing in Cambodia, whatever you're trying to do in Canada, it will benefit the people nowadays and the younger generation.
Excellent, thank you. All right, so we're going to get to a few of our questions for the panel now. So this first one is for Aloysius and Taddy. So maybe Taddy, you'd like to speak first, but could you tell us about some of the obstacles you have faced as a young person involved in DNP or obstacles that you've seen other young people face?
Moi, personnellement,
Personally, I have not met many barriers or difficulties. The problem is not so much difficulties that young members face, but the problem is more the reasons why there's so little youth. I think there are obstacles in terms of entering
once you're already part of the organizations, it's easier to participate. But the problem is getting into the organization, recruiting members. I think the first reason, and Brendan referred to this, most programs for youth accompaniment have been cuts. So obviously, it's no wonder there are less young people. Selena is great, but she works for the whole country, French and English. So there is an issue of communication, how to get in touch with the youth. And in Quebec, we don't have Catholic public schools like there are elsewhere in the country. I also believe why is development and peace not in line with the thousands of activists, young activists working for climates? And I think that's a little bit more complicated. But there is certainly a lot of preconceived ideas and biases against the church that are unfounded. Unfortunately, when something like the Partners Review happened, it's as if we were, projecting caricature of what we think. Fake accusations made by single men, about women's sexuality and morality. And I think it will take time to reestablish trust. I also think there are differences between
groupe des jeunes militants, militantes et développement de paix. Et je crois qu'en grande partie, c'est vraiment des différences surface.
I think there's superficial differences, cosmetic differences between what development and peace think and how young activists think, but I think these still represent an obstacle, a barrier. What I found interesting, for example, when from the synthesis of consultations,
les membres parlaient du FEM, puis les partenaires parlaient du souveraineté.
It says that member was speaking of food sovereignty and the effects of colonialism and climate change and privatization and the commodification of natural resources.
Je crois que il y a la langage autour du
the language around colonialism, capitalism, neoliberalism, and the language around diversity. I think that many young people are very much aware of racial diversity, socioeconomic diversity.
Aussi, il faut, je crois que c'est Dr. Dixon qui l'a dit.
And I think Dr. Dixon said this. We must be ready to recognize gender diversity beyond the masculine feminist binary, but within young activist movements and justice movements. There are trans youth, non-binary youth, homosexual youth, and those youth form a great part of the leaders. And if they are excluded, many others will be hesitant to associate with the movement. Certainly, if we see that there's a majority of white people, this will also be noticed and be an obstacle. I'm just speaking of how we can put ourselves in line with other movements. I think that many beliefs, many objectives are similar. So I try to think what would other youth, the youth with whom I work in other contexts, what would they think if they were here? In order to get in touch with youth, we have to make sure that where there are Catholic youth group, development and peace is known. People know what it is. Some people tell me I've never heard of it. At my university, I spent a year in a residence run by the Loreto sisters. Yes, I'm almost done. I am certain that if people there
leurs invités, je suis certaine que beaucoup vont avec beaucoup d'enthousiasme.
I'm certain that if they had received an invitation, many of those youth would have supported development and peace enthusiastically. Many girls and young women were Muslim and Hindu, and many of them would have supported development and peace. So I think we must reach out to Catholic spaces, but also reach out to groups that work for social and environmental justice. There are probably people who are more or less Catholic, more or less Christians, but that would still be interested in supporting development and peace. No, that's good. That's good. Thank you, Tali. That's great. We can always keep talking about those issues throughout the assembly. Aloysius, would you?
For sure. I guess to keep it brief, I'll just speak to one particular story, I guess, or obstacle that I ran into in my time as a youth rep. I was just starting out, so I think this was around 2018. I was working with, hold it closer. Sure. I was working with Luke Stocking, who was the animator at the time in Toronto. And we were organizing a film screening for, as I'm sure many of us here are familiar, the DNP film After the Storm, which is about building the Pope Francis Village in the Philippines. And so at that time was also spent a lot of time at the Newman Center at the University of Toronto, and was involved in that community. So I tried connecting them. And lo and behold, it was around the same time where we had a lot of the issues around the partners. And so their youth programs officer there, they were sending bishops' letters back and forth in terms of, can we go ahead with putting a screening? They were uncomfortable with it. Luke was like, well, actually, we cleared that stuff up. Here's another letter from the bishop. And it was going back and forth. And I was very confused. I had no idea, what the context was behind all of this. To the credit, both Luke and the other fellow, checked in with me after and tried to explain their side of things and brought that in. But I think with an organization with such a history as DNP and has so much behind it, I think it takes a lot of time to bring people into the movement. I think that's something, Tara, you alluded to as well. I think the barriers are less in once you're in. I think people here are quite welcoming, and in fact, but I think it's getting in first. I think it's really getting that first step in and introducing people to the movement. One thing I've found challenging in particular, to this day, is just describing DNP in 2 to 3 sentences to folks. I was trying to tell my coworkers about it. I was like, hey, I'm going to Halifax. What are you going for? I'm like, oh, it's this nonprofit I work with. We're a solidarity movement. On there, like, what do you mean solidarity? What does that mean? So I'm like, it's okay. So I gave the example of, so we work with partners, for example, in the Philippines, and we help build this village that's sustainable. I was like, okay, that makes more sense. Right. And especially not everyone comes from a Catholic background or a social justice background. And so navigating that and navigating all of those, I think is quite tricky. Yeah. So I think I'll leave it at that. I think it's just, I think the barriers are, for the most part, getting into the movement and describing what this is and why it's so important. And also, to bring in Dr. Dixon's point, it's really difficult as youth to or as anyone to join any movement where you don't see other people like you, whether it's people your same age or your same background. So if within your own parishes, within your own diocesan council, within your own groups, there aren't that many other youth there. That's what I found challenging when there was only me and another regular member of the Toronto Council. Even if we'd invite people, they would come for an event or two. If there isn't already an established community of just people that enjoy each other's company, right? It's more difficult to bring that forward. And even if that only lasts for a couple of years and people move on and work and things like that, I think it's still valuable. And I think that's something we all need to keep in mind.
Thank you, Aloysius. Okay, and next we'll hear from Paul Turner about some of the obstacles he sees from his perspective in youth engagement.
Okay. I don't speak French. I'm so sad I didn't hear Taddy's. And I'm glad that you spoke so long because the youth should be speaking longer, and they should have longer, but they should have longer than an hour to speak. Just throwing out that uncomfortable piece of information. Obstacles, like Aloysius said, it's just a matter of getting young people engaged and understanding what development and peace is all about. And if you can do that, we have a really good chance of making progress. The most commonly named sign of hope in Survey of the Times consultation, it was the leadership of youth people. So Brenda, I know you already did it, but I want the youth people out there to stand one more time for us, please, because you are our future. Stand up. Thank you. So real quickly, I'll try. This is important stuff. Yeah. Not what I'm saying, but they're important. So how do we get more people involved? It's a question. One of the obstacles is that paralysis of, the world. If you look at it, even in Canada right now with, the crisis of affordable housing, homophobia, racism, the atrocities of residential schools, it can paralyze you, so that's an obstacle in itself, not just for adults, but for young people. But what I think we really need to try, Catholics, we're not good at reaching out to people. The evangelicals, they do a good job, and we have a lot to learn from them, I think. It's time that Catholics, they're not coming to us. We need to go to them. Okay. And that's our young people too. And Princess Leia is, Emily is my animator in Ontario. And just recently, she's been into our school board to talk to the principals, all the principals in the system, which is perfect. That's a good start. And she got at least 11 or 12 schools that were interested. So it's just getting into the schools and telling them, because we have the gift of education in Ontario, we have that opportunity. Get in there. These kids, they might not understand the reality of our church because they're not practicing their faith, but they sure get the Jesus who is for the poor and with the poor. They get that, and they can connect to that. And if we can reach out and work towards giving them that message, then we got a shot at getting more young people involved in development and peace, in any social movement that helps the most vulnerable. They get that. So that's what we need to do. That's an obstacle, and that's the way to deal with it. One other quick thing, in our curriculum, somebody yesterday mentioned social justice and charity. Well, in our schools for the last 15 or 20 years, in some of our programs, our politics and peace program in particular, they get that. They get the charity versus social justice. It's part of the curriculum, but we need to do more in our system. We need the development and peace should be right across the board in our schools, in our elementary schools and in our high schools, in all of them. If, that would be the vision, and the reality is not the case, but we got to work hard at that. So I know I went on a little too long, but sorry about that.
Great. Thank
Yeah.
you. Thank you
Thank
very much, Paul. That'll go to Rebecca. So we also, yes, have Rebecca and Fanny kind of representing our networks that we are part of. So Caritas and CIDSE, and that's a very important part of our movement of DNP, and also in terms of attracting young people to be part of DNP and as participation. It's wonderful to have these big networks, these international networks to be part of and participate in actively, and go to events with, and that's been a wonderful part. I know of many youth here today, and myself personally, it's a huge asset to be part of such wonderful networks. So I guess, Rebecca, if you could comment on any obstacles you've seen in your work with Caritas, and also what priorities or advice maybe you'd like to express to DNP members here today, based on your experiences.
So in my work, I am supporting, of course, the young people throughout the Caritas Confederation, but also the longer that I'm in it, I realize that an important part of my work is also providing formation for member organizations about how to make space for young people. Sorry, I'm the fourth person to hold the mic too far away from my face. And so two things stood out when you asked about the obstacles to me. The first is resources, because people always say, we want young people involved, but this doesn't come out of thin air. This is an investment. When you talk about engaging young people successfully, it requires an investment. This costs money. So, you invest resources. Sometimes it means it makes sense to hire a staff person like Selena to support youth engagement, or like me, Caritas Internationalis invested in a position to support the young people in their network. This was an investment they made because they saw that it was important. And so, or it could be funds for running events or initiatives to connect young people, but it does require resources. And so if you're struggling to engage young people, think of this question. Look at your budget, your DC grants budget. Have you allotted any money for engaging young people? Because it is very important, just like any important program that we have, youth engagement, it's an investment, and it's a worthwhile investment. I think when people do it, they realize that. The second thing is an attitude that I sometimes come across, not necessarily a bad attitude, but this thought. Actually, it's something that we hear a lot, and it's the attitude that youth are the future. But what we're trying to do, especially at Caritas, is sort of change this perspective and say, no, youth aren't the future, they're the present. And when we talk about engaging young people, we need to engage them now as young people and take advantage, not in a bad way, but enjoy the gifts that young people bring as young people. So to do this, we need to redefine what we think of as expertise, because the youth perspective as youth is so important. So, don't think that the only way to measure experience is with time, and don't think that the only way to measure expertise is with a employment record or educational record, because youth have expertise and experience simply by being young people in the world today. And this is a very, very valuable perspective that should be taken into account now. So, changing this perspective of youth being the present instead of just the future. And then, maybe just a quick thing to say, advice to answer your second question. I think that a good opportunity or a good approach is to simply make space. It sounds quite simple, but put a youth rep position on your diocesan councils, have these youth rep spaces on our governance board. And then once these positions are filled, because there is interest in them, I can tell you that. Then it's just, support, support, support. And this, of course, means teaching young people what you know, but also, and very importantly, letting yourselves learn from them and letting yourselves be evangelized by them too. And when I reflected on this question, I think of, and how powerful this can be. I can offer my own sort of story as a testimony. And this is why it's so special for me to be back here with all of you in this place in Halifax, because I think it's always a beautiful thing when, we can return to the people and places that make us who we are. And so much of who I am today is because of the time I spent here in Atlantic Canada, and with the incredible people that I spent it with. I truly believe that this place made me. I'm going to try not to cry in front of all of them. But it's because of the incredible support that I had from the Development and Peace members that I met when I landed here as a, freshly graduated, young, terrified animator, far from home, my first time leaving home, and I came all the way here for it. But everyone here was so kind and welcoming. And, some of these Development and Peace members were Development and Peace members longer than I'd even been alive, but they still supported all of my sometimes crazy ideas. And it was such a beautiful intergenerational balance, and I felt so supported and welcome, and it gave me the confidence to do more and to be more in the movement. And, I really think that that it's because of the amazing community I had here, and it gave me the confidence to do what I'm doing now. And I really think that if it wasn't for my time that I spent here, I wouldn't be doing what I'm doing now with Caritas. I don't know if I would have the guts to do it. And so it's this place and these people, and I just want to name you all now: the Halifax Yarmouth Council, Antigonish, St. John, that are different, by the way, Charlottetown, Corner Brook and Labrador, Grand Falls and Windsor. You guys made me who I am, and I really appreciate that. And I want to take this time. I can't come all the way here without thanking you for it. And then, of course, I received the same support in Hamilton, London, and St. Catharines when I went home for that. So I owe you all a huge debt of gratitude for that. And I just want to say thank you.
Thank you, Rebecca. And just to add, we are starting to wind down the panel, but Rebecca, if you'd like to talk to her about the really cool working groups that are starting with Caritas Internationalis Youth, it's really fascinating, a really interesting way that, young adults all around the world are joining committees together to work for change, for resource development, for communication strategies. It's very, very cool. And there's lots of actually young adults here today that are part of those committees, both on staff and volunteers. So if you want to chat with Rebecca about that, I'm sure she'd be delighted to. So Fanny, could you comment on any obstacles you see in your work with Change for the Planet, SIDSE, and also if you have any priorities you'd like to express, now is the time.
Okay, thank you. Paul, I agree. We need more than an hour to talk. I don't know how much time there's left, but I'll try to be short. I guess in terms of obstacle in youth engagement, what we see at CFTP Change for the Planet is the access to real proposal and the lack of information. We feel that we need to be clearer with young people. We need to listen to their needs, to amplify their voices, and to give them space. We also the pressure to get into the labor market after the studies from the families and from society is there, and really sometimes it just make us forget about the common good. And another obstacles for us is the lack of the sense of community. This is why for Change for the Planet, it is so important to create those spaces to help young people connect among each other, exchange, share experiences, get inspired, because when you're alone, it's harder to take actual actions. But when you're in a community, you have people around you with the same values, going towards the same goal. It is easier. There's a saying that a that I believe it's true is that alone you go faster, but together you go further. And I truly believe it's a key to the success of youth engagement. So these are the obstacles. I've tried to be short. And in terms of priorities, I would really say that I think it's important to really see young people not only as a target, but really as an added value to our organization, because their role in planning, implementing, and evaluating is crucial. We really need to get young people more involved, to give them space and to give them time to ask them more what they need, because they know what they need. They know what they need, they know what we need, and I think we really need to recognize their amazing work already now and to trust them. They're here and they know what to do.
Thank you. Wonderful, Fanny. And now, well, we just have a few minutes left, so we're going to give a little time to Aloysius and Taddy to express their priorities, their vision to all of you today. So, Aloysius.
All right, here we go. Let's try to get it all down. And now we've got 2 minutes. All right, speed run. Okay, here we go. I think Rebecca put it really well in terms of just. I will slow down a little bit. I'd like to thank Rebecca again, especially for expressing that if we re-envision youth not just as the future, but as the present of the movement as well, like we're going to be here for a long time, but we're here right now as well, right? If you think about it, when I joined more fulsomely in the movement in about again 2018, I was here. Jason was still another youth rep with me, and now he's an animator, right? Gabrielle was a youth rep, and now she's the head of her diocesan council. And case in point, Brenda was another youth rep, and now she's the president of of National Council, right? We're here right now, and we can do a lot right now, and continue to build the movement going into the future for years and years to come. If you think of and I think I can see it now, right? Like the people who are here today, and and who've been here for a lot of years, you all know each other, right? I see everyone coming back and they're like, oh, how are you? How are things back in Hamilton, in Edmonton, in Vancouver, in St. John's, in Montreal? And just seeing how long everyone's known each other, it's that kind of community we need among the youth as well. I think a good example, as you were mentioning, as well, Fanny, in terms of building community, we can look for something like Fridays Our Future. I'm sure many are familiar with the movement that Greta Thunberg founded. There's representatives from Toronto, from all across the world that come together and they meet physically to discuss how to continue to engage the movement, and that keeps them going week after week after week, even when elected officials and people continue to not do enough around the climate and climate justice around the world. I think I'll leave it off here. I think to bring it back to the metaphor of growth and of the canopy that Dr. Dixon was speaking about earlier, right? We need that support from everyone here, like that trunk that's been established for decades at DNP, but we also need a little bit of space to grow and to continue to make our way into the light and to continue to grow the movement and the movement that is DNP and the important work that we do. So I'll leave it there.
Thank you, Aloysius. Et Taddy, est-ce que tu peux ajouter quelques petites choses?
Oui, je m'excuse, c'est très courte.
Tati, veux-tu ajouter quelque chose? Oui. There were two things yesterday that gave me a lot of confidence and encouraged me. One thing made me question a bit whether I wanted to continue to invest so much energy in development and peace. It was said fairly clearly what my hope is for the future. I have what reassured me, gave me more confidence, is what Luc said, because everyone says that we are a democratic movement, a social movement. And we have to have confidence in our partners, in our members. We have to, during the pandemic, we learned to connect ourselves at a distance, but I think we are not using all the capacity that is there. We could perhaps have discussions among members.
Des discussions aussi, puisque c'est à distance.
At a distance with partners. And I think there's a lot of resources which exist among us and among the members, which could be used just by making the call. We're talking about more training. We could be better prepared for some things. Are there people who have expertise? Perhaps we sometimes need translation to talk with certain partners, but we can find someone who speaks that language. So I'm trying to be brief. The creed, I don't want to criticize the people who made it, but I noted the absence of climatic justice and ecological justice. And if we look at where young people are now, that's where they are becoming involved. The people, even before starting high school, have been organizing for climatic justice. I think that if we are not clear that it is fundamental in order to eliminate poverty, for peace and for development, I think we will not have a future.
So as you can imagine, we've barely scratched the surface on this discussion, but we much appreciate this time to introduce some of these ideas and topics. Everyone here is going to be around throughout the conference, so don't let the discussion end here. The whole idea is to be weaving in ideas like the engagement of young people into all of our discussions going forward. So as we're building this plan, as we're building this roadmap, as we go forward as development and peace, let's include these ideas and continue these discussions. And yeah, please seek out any one of us to continue if you'd like to share, if you'd like to hear more. Yeah, don't let the discussion end here. So a big thank you to Fanny, Rebecca, Aloysius, Taddy, and Paul. And to all of you. And I think we're moving on to Richard.
There has someone who had a question. Jan?
Yeah.
Interpreter doesn't hear the intervention.
I just wanted to make a comment. I'm Rhiannon, I'm the Anglophone Youth Rep on National Council. I just wanted to thank the panel so much for being here and speaking so well in regards to youth. I think we've come a long way with youth in development and peace, and I want to thank all of you who have done the consultation process and made youth a priority and made it known that youth is a priority in this movement. Coming on to National Council, I must say, I think it started out as feeling like youth were a token on National Council and not really integrated in the whole process, and not feeling maybe like we really had a true voice around the table. And I must say, I think that in my 2 years of being on council has changed quite a bit. I feel very integrated in the process. and in the movement. And we have started a youth advisory committee as one of the actual committees on National Council. And I think that's a huge movement in the right direction as well. So it's kind of a liaison between the youth movement and National Council. And we've done a lot of work in that committee to bring that youth voice forward. So I just wanted to say thank you and thank you.
Merci, merci.
Thank you very much to the youth. It was quite marvelous, youth. That's why I have decided to just stay young. It's a decision I've made.